Hi everyone, my name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to my channel, Just One Truth. In this channel, I postulate and discuss the idea that there is one inner spiritual teaching that is nested in all of the world's religions. And I've talked about that quite extensively. In fact, that's the only basis of my channel. If you're interested in that, welcome. What I'm doing in this series right here is breaking down the teachings of Jesus using a technique that I believe if we use on all of the religions and mythologies from history, that shows us how to unlock and reveal the nested teaching. And that if you use the same set of parameters on all of them, they unlock the same thing. This kind of tightens things up. You're not allowed to just wander off and make up whatever you want to and invent a story. This kind of focuses everything down on looking at the individual. And that's how I approach this. So if you're interested in that, welcome. And this is part number 2. So if you want to see how this really kind of unfolds, I'll put a link in the area below to part 1 of this series. I would recommend starting there. For everyone else, let's jump right into where we left off. And the next verse was out of Matthew 13. It was in the section called Salt and Light. And I'll remind everyone I'm using the New Revised Standard Bible. And this is Matthew 5:13, where we currently are right here. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but it is thrown out and trampled underfoot. Okay, simple one. We are the salt of the earth. That's us. We start out in life. We've covered this again and again and again. We start out life, empty slate. We're pure. We're ready. We're the salt of the earth. As life goes on, we pick up things that prevent us from being the salt of the earth. If we fit this category, then what happens? We become just products of life. We become products of our beliefs, of what we're conditioned, of what we have been told based on our cultural location, our families, the beliefs, pain, shame, hurt, anything like that, whatever we become, prevents us from being the salt of the earth anymore. So the question metaphorically then is, how do we get the flavor back of that salt? What has happened along the way? We have actually layered things on that we need to get rid of. But if we don't do that, these verses don't cover what to do to heal. These verses are basically telling us that when you're born, you're the salt. You're a metaphoric representation of this story. That you are good. But you lose that. And then you get trampled underfoot. You just become a product of what happens around you. You fit into society as a product of what that society does. And it's your local society. You're not stepped back from that. You're trampled underfoot. That's it on this one. It's a pretty simple one. If I was to reword it today, I would say something like this. You are born pure, but you may lose access to that as life unfolds and you simply fall into the mass. That's all that verse is telling us. And again, in the first line, it had that question in there. How can its saltiness be restored? Yeah, that is what we're looking to do, is restore that saltiness. Metaphoric. We want to restore our purity. The person that we were before we picked up all of our life convictions that become prejudices and beliefs that create our life that continues to unfold in that same manner. Yeah, that's it. Over and over again. I want to say something here, and for people that have been following along, there's going to be this realization that all of these teachings don't go all over the place, that once you turn them in on yourself and start looking at them, they almost seem to like laser target in on your soul, your feelings, your convictions, clear them out, empty yourself. It's just said in a whole bunch of different ways. Again, they're talking to this is 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. Imagine being a little shepherd boy out someplace and somebody tells you a story and it's called Genesis. You've never heard that before. It takes an hour to hear it. You want to hear it again. Some camel master passing through tells you the story, obliges you. and then ask before he leaves, do you want me to tell you the secret? And you're like, no, I won't get another story for 6 months. Leave it for me to figure out. I can see these as being incredibly big, complex, wonderful carrier stories in a world where that is what they had. That was their media. And they waited long. They didn't just download more. They had to wait till somebody came by with a new story. Okay, and apologies for always throwing in those little those little side stories there. It just seems to me like when I tried to understand this stuff in our world, I really struggled with what they were doing until I realized how simple their life was and how important this was, and how we look at the stories today trying to understand them at face value, and they were never intended to be that way. Never. That's the carrier for their people. It made sense to them. They weren't going to worship somebody else's God. They had to have their own. They weren't going to follow somebody else's heroes. They had to have their own. But the wise people saw what to do, and they kept nesting these stories. They're not plagiarized. They're borrowed. They're meaningful. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. And I'm going to read the next 3 together. They fit together. Starting with 14. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. The first thing is, let's look at the first verse again. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. Turn it inward. Wow. City built, world. We can't look outward. What are these things? When we turn it inward, the largest component of the story is us. The world is what? It's our experience. We have no control over the earth and other people. The only thing we can have control over is the way we view it, the way we interface with it, the way we have our personal experience with it. That is our world. The light is that process right there. How do you view it? How do you look at it? How do you process it? That's the quality of your light. You want to build on an elevated place, up on a hill. You want to make sure that your thinking is such, and your processing, and your convictions, which are your light, are such that your world is up on a hill. Okay, so you want to elevate yourself. It doesn't tell us how to do it. It's just saying, ooh, yeah. Okay, let's move on to number 15 then. We just looked at the idea that we have to build ourselves up on a hill. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and gives light to all in the house. Okay, in this verse, we change the metaphoric componentry. We are now the house. That is what is there. We went from being the light of the world to the house in this verse. Still using the same procedure, just different nouns and verbs. In this case, no one, after lighting a lamp, puts it on a bushel basket. When we turn inside of us and we have things that we have hidden away, things that we don't want to face, our fears, all the things that metaphorically over the ages would have been called the weeds in your garden, the skeletons in your closet, the demons that possess you, all of the elements inside of us that might be called sins, transgressions, oughts, no matter where you learn it from, there's some sort of verbiage. Enemies within, the people you need to kill. All the things that we hold inside of us that are represented by the beliefs that we picked up in life that we now say, oh my God, I've got to let that go. Once you realize that and you illuminate something, in my case, it was really illuminating something that I had hidden away, very buried, and I didn't want anybody to know. And once I got it out, that was indicative of lighting the lamp. And I didn't hide it. I brought that out into the light. And as soon as I did that, I observed, oh, that's what I have to do. And that act, it illuminated to me what I needed to do. And that was to open up all of these dark places and put light into them, which is metaphorically really just means going after all of the fears, the pain, the shame, the hurt, the convictions, the things that you have inside of you that are derogatory, that are negative, that hurt you, that hurt other people. and get rid of them. Get it out, find it. And you do it by seeing it. You do it by observing it. It happens through acknowledgement, by ceasing to deny its existence. Bring it into the light. Open it up. Just make it conscious. It goes from a hidden place to an open place, from where you don't want to talk about it to where it doesn't bother you anymore. You got to get from one place to another. No, it's not an easy path. Okay, let's move on to 16, the last verse, and just take a quick look at it. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father which is in heaven. This could mean two things. We really have, we can look at this positively, both outwardly and inwardly. In the same way, let your light shine before others. When you say, boy, I found it, I'm happy, I'm going to live my life, and people go, yeah, I was like that too, and I'm looking for the same thing. I like what you have. You're kind of showing a way. But letting your light shine before others is, being open about it, perhaps. It's really, light means open, means illuminate, means everything. It's not just bright. Ooh, let me smile and put on an outward show. No, it's more than that. So they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. The other way that I see, and before I leave that, and then somebody could look at that and say, oh, look at, they are, they're in line with whatever their belief system is. They must be getting rewarded because they're happy. So I'm going to go ahead and give glory to their Father. And what's that? They're going to worship. They're going to, sounds like an idol. The outward one, I don't like the sounds of it all. If you take that and put it inward, though, and let your light shine before others, it's like, you know what? I was ashamed of something I did, but I'm really pissed about something that happened over here. I'm not going to let go of the shame, but this piss thing, I can deal with that. I can forgive the person. I could figure out a way to do it. And then in doing that, you experience an uplifting, lightning sort of, wow, I'm no longer dragging that with me. I not only feel better, but I'm not like getting triggered anymore. I'm not experiencing life with things happening that are there to trigger that, because it's no longer a trigger. And that tells me that, this other thing, it illuminated that that's what I'm supposed to do. I would look at it more than that way, that it's because that to me is effective. When I did it, and I'm not sure on this verse, I just know that if I look at it in that way, that it seems to be that way, that the more you bring things that are dark, that are hidden, that are something you want hidden away out into the light, the more you can talk about them, the more that you can view them, the more you can become less affected by them in a derogatory way, the more your life improves. And it seems to be that this, I don't know what else it means. The next one's a fun one. It's going to take a little bit, and probably will take up the rest of this video. The law and the prophets. Let me read the whole section here. There is verse 17 through 20. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This one's dense. It takes more. It takes more than we have right here. We're going to have to set this off to the side and go look at Moses for a minute. This one is critical because we have a situation where Jesus is saying, I support my Hebrew heritage, my roots, the Jewish teachings. I'm there with all of it. And I have talked with Christians before who have said the Old Testament is old, there's a new covenant, all those things. Others who say, no, it's okay to hate or hurt or do some sort of I don't want to get into a lot of details, but they will say Jesus says that he supports everything that happens from way back then. And then they begin throwing Leviticus and everything in there, which means Jesus hates fags and all that. You got to say, stop. That doesn't fit. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. When you look at Jesus, who says things like, it doesn't matter when you go and teach people what they feed you, because what goes into your mouth doesn't matter. It's what comes out of your mouth. Well, there goes the kosher food laws in Jesus' teaching. The idea that coveting your neighbor's wife, it's not enough to not do it, but to think it, to process it, to put it in your mind without acting upon it is enough right there. That is bad enough. And not acting it out isn't good enough. If you're sitting there thinking about it all the time, that's still worse. Jesus really, when you look at it, if I analyze it, and I think we all look at it, we go, I see some conflict there with the idea that Jesus is supporting what Jewish teachings are, or what Christians, many of the different variations of Christians, think Judaism is, that they adopt for their Christianity. All right, there we are. How do we reconcile this? There are different ways of nesting teachings in ways that are very in big monstrous stories that contain small teaching verses, but the carrier story is a huge, fun, exciting thing. Or it might be very short, packed, dense verses, or in between. Buddha and Lao Tzu talked in a little bit longer verses. Jesus had some parables, but a lot of his were one-liners. But a lot of teachings are big, big, big stories that have monstrous amounts of superfluous details that might include things like your local king, your local towns and cities, a couple of historical things that have happened. You can just keep throwing stuff in a teaching to make it yours, to make it belong to you. And that's an easy thing to do. It's just building stories. Let's take a look at something here for a second. This is something that I keep talking about because I believe this is really what is at the core of this. Jesus says to get to the kingdom of heaven within, do so as a child. The child we're looking at is the person who hasn't yet learned the judgments. To them, nobody is fat. Nobody has colors. Nobody has anything other than they're just people. Let's just be people. That's what Jesus wants us to be at that place where you don't care about anything except we're just people. Let's work together. Let's love one another. Let's not grow up and develop all of those prejudices. In life, we know from our own experience that that's kind of what happens when we start out. If you look at your life and you look back when you were a child, you don't even remember it. We have no fathomable recollection of childhood details because our brains were not yet developed enough. As we gradually begin little bits and more, a couple of things grow together, those grow together. Pretty soon we have this monstrous network and boom, we are learning rapidly. Starts out slow, but then exponentially, boom, it hits a point right there. And that while that is happening, we're learning all about our life. We are developing who and what we are based on our experiences when we're not aware of that. And we are becoming products of those beliefs and those experiences. And that those can be very bad and derogatory. And that for spiritual healing, we look at going back and addressing all of those things and rethinking those things and figuring out a way to heal and to stop judging and to let go of convictions that are preventing or limiting us from having a very happy life. We all know that. We see that. What did Moses teach? What if every one of us is Adam when we're born? In the Garden of Eden, a place of bliss, an imaginary place of bliss in his story. And that as he grows and develops, he becomes two, like we do. Eve separates out the side of Adam. We become not just that conscious, blissful entity, but now we become two people with this other portion of us, our subconscious, our Eve part, going off and exploring life and getting hooked up with what? The serpent, which represents being tied to the ground, unable to rise above. It doesn't have legs, doesn't have wings, nothing. The serpent is stuck on terra firma. It's not going any place up above that. That's where Eve went and then came back. The conscious and the subconscious then emerge as one, and we act out. We start becoming this split kind of a person. I like this. I shouldn't do that. All those things. We become divided, and in so we lose that bliss. God, the entity or the experience, the goodness, has sent us out of our place of bliss. We are now no longer in the Garden of Eden. Then as we go off in life, our Adam and Eve, our conscious and our subconscious, we have experiences all throughout life, blending those two together. And as a result, we have offspring. We produce good and we produce bad. And in this case, with Cain and Abel, the bad wins out over the good, right? The stories go on. I don't want to detail this. I did a little bit there to get us started, but let's move on in a little bit faster with this story. It's a big story that contains the same lessons. What we now find out is that we are the Israelis. We're captured. We're trapped. We belong to Pharaoh. Metaphor for we are now living life and we're trapped by our experiences. And we've hit a point where we are waking up and we think, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want that life that I came from to be. I see I want to grow. I want to develop. I want to become something different. And we try to leave behind what is behind us. But we're practiced very much at it and we can't escape. First Pharaoh says, yeah, go. Then you try to go. Then they come after you. This is a metaphor for you're trying to leave your past behind, but it keeps coming after you. It's hard to cut this off. What do? You go to the sea, you part it, you go through, you close it off behind you. Metaphorically, you're severing your capacity to experience your past life anymore. You're leaving situations so that you're no longer influenced and brought back off course. Then you are 40 years in the desert. The Jewish mystic traditions, I'm not going to post any links. You can go look this stuff up if you want. Tell us that 40 means till the end or till the time of completion. And if we look at the number 40, we see that the Israelites went into the desert for 40 years. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. And you look at, there's like you go into this with one thing happening, you come out with something different happening on the end. And if you look at that, you see turmoil going in, okay, coming out. You're looking at perhaps this idea of 40 is code for however long it takes you to get through this, to break through your walls, to rent that curtain, to get inside and to clean things out, to go, I'm a mess, to, okay. And that might take, it depends what you have in there. It's going to be different for everybody and how fast you can make progress. At any rate, so they're 40 years in the desert. And as time goes on, the whole story has, I'll nutshell it here, I promise. We're fighting a giant. We're defeating our enemies along the way as we're heading for what? We're looking for the promised land. One of the stories in here is this biblical flood, this grandiose story where the world, myself, along my life, I have picked up many things, characteristics, offspring, people, humans, ideas, beliefs, convictions that take me off course. My world is now polluted and I need to purge it, but I'm purging it of the things that I want to get rid of. I'm not starting completely over. I'm going back to what there is originally. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story there is very similar. If you're not familiar with it, I'll tell you that the gods had mundane chores they didn't want to do, so they created humans, and humans populated too much, yacked too much, were bothersome, and they wanted to wipe out the world and start over, so that's what they did. I believe that's the first symbolic story that describes a metaphor for the purging of oneself to get rid of one's own characteristics. It's a rebirth, and that it was simply borrowed in Christianity. There's a couple of different versions in Christianity. At any rate, you see that there's this idea, if you decode it in this way and you make yourself metaphoric representations of the story, understanding, however, this time that it's big story components instead of short story verses, that it still works the same way. Strip off the superfluous stuff, the stuff that doesn't make any difference, and you find the basic elements is that you're still purging yourself and clearing your soul. And now Jesus is supporting Moses. That's the only way I can reconcile that, what he says. So there he says, I've not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Yeah, he's fulfilling it. He's fulfilling the same thing that Buddha fulfilled, that Lhasa fulfilled, that Hinduism fulfills, that at all. Yeah, nothing special there. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from a law until all is accomplished. Boy, let's just leave that one alone. Sounds okay. I don't know if it means anything to us right now, but there are some important points ahead, so I want to cover that before this gets too long. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Boy, that one, it's going to have to grow on me a little bit more than it has. I struggle with it a bit. Whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments. What are the commandments? The commandments are to turn inward, to look at yourself, to purge yourself. Ultimately, I think to me right then and there that that's it, that if you do not do any of those things, or if you don't do one of those things, that you're not going to find that inner peace that you're looking for. So if somebody is not doing any of those, you're not going to make it. And if somebody is saying to you, oh, you don't need to do that. All you have to do is praise here, or give there, or relinquish here. Is that what it means? Quite possibly. However, it seems to be supported if we carry on to the next one. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, we look in their days, and what are scribes and Pharisees as he's using the term? Most of the population does not read, does not write, and there is no written material available for them to just go check out at the library anyway. They're just talking verbally. When they hear the word, they need to hear it from somebody who can read. Some of the rare people, those would be the scribes. Pharisees can also read, but their job is to also interpret. They will tell them, well, not working on the Sabbath means that, yes, you can pick some corn for your family, but you cannot pick some for your neighbors. Things of that nature. That's what scribes and Pharisees did. But what layer is that? As we've been going through this, we see that there are those layers, the literal layer of the story, the outer looking layer that becomes the person that is doing the interpreting, and the inner looking layer that suddenly you interpret it this way, period. You don't take it off someplace and make something up. The scribes and the Pharisees are not at that layer 3. They are teaching people how to get on their knees and pray, how to sacrifice animals properly. I think Jesus right here is saying, you got to get past that layer 2. You have to get beyond the teachings that are your standard teachings. Only because I see that here. I don't see how you can turn this one in on yourself, though. This seems more like a way of describing to people that there's more nested in here, and here's a clue. Here, if you can figure this out, maybe it'll help you figure out other parts as well. That's kind of how I read it. It isn't plain language. You have to figure it out. And of course, we all do that in our own way. I would always warn people that if you're coming at this with a conviction, if you're seeking, but you already have a belief, what you're going to find is verification of your pre-existing belief. If you want to find the truth, you have to let go of pre-existing beliefs. You can't say it's going to be God, it's going to be spirits, it's going to be something, or you will get stuck right there. You can't open up to other things when you have convictions. You have to let go of your convictions. Anyway, I'm going to end this video now. As always, it's been fun. For some reason, I'm very excited about this stuff. It's theory. I would like other people to say, yeah, I don't know. And at the end of the day, I think there's 2 things going on here with my channel, maybe 3. Number 1, here's what I did. Number 2, here's what I found, and I think it's very global. Number 3, ultimately, No matter where you are, if you want to be happy, you have to get rid of the things that keep you unhappy. What are metaphors? Maybe I should try to leave a metaphor. Run as fast as you can. Imagine yourself in a field unencumbered and you're... Now imagine you've taken a chain and tied it to the bumper of a car that's sitting there stationary, rusting away, and you grab that chain. Now run as fast as you can. What is the better thing to do to make progress? My dog says it's time to go on a walk. Love everyone. I'll see you in the next video.